If you think hiring a professional is expensive, try hiring an amateur. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm an amateur contractor, I'm an amateur accountant, but I am a professional investor. And so I'm going to stick with what I do best.
Welcome to How to Real Estate Podcast, a podcast that will help you start, elevate, and catapult your real estate investing career. Jared tested, Jana approved. Hi guys, welcome to How to Real Estate. This is Jared.
And this is Jana.
And we are the podcast that helps you start, elevate, and catapult your real estate investing career. Today, I'm really excited. This guest actually got me started investing in real estate. I didn't even think about doing real estate at all, not even a little bit, until I got in a room with this man right here. He's been a coach, a mentor, a friend this past 4 years. It's really kind of guided me to becoming the man I've become, pushed me to, better myself. So this guy right here, our guest today, he's a 4 times best-selling author, 4 times. He has a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. He's been investing in real estate for the past 10 years, and he's helped countless other people just like me start in real estate and really change their lives. I'm so happy and honored to bring on Mitch Nelson. How's it going, man?
It's going well. Thank you, Jared. That was an amazing introduction, man. I'm flattered.
Well, it's all true. It's all true.
Well, good. That makes me happy.
So Jared wasn't the only one. I started investing because of you as well.
Mm-hmm. You guys are making
cherries.
Right. This whole podcast wouldn't even happen wasn't for you. See, it's your fault.
It's your fault. Sorry, people.
My fault. Okay. I'll take the blame.
Well, we're so happy to have Mitch on the line, not for just because he helped me and Jana start. Mitch, you're so knowledgeable. I love talking about when I first met you and you talked about how to structure a deal so you don't get in trouble. Because one of the biggest things that people hear about real estate, it's risky. It's risky. And it can be risky, very, very risky if you don't know what you're doing. And one thing that you've taught me from the first meeting I met you was about how to structure a deal to protect your assets. So can you talk a little bit about how do you structure your fix and flip deals so that you're protected and it makes sense?
Yeah, that was something that I looked at as I was even getting started myself in real estate investing. Is I knew it was risky, at least I'd heard it's risky, right?
Right.
And I have kind of a lower risk tolerance. I know that's a weird thing for an investor to say, but I don't love the idea of taking on risk. I love the idea of making money. That's why I do what I do, right? But
right.
The idea of taking on incredible amounts of risk to do it just wasn't exciting to me. So a lot of study, a lot of time taken, diving into different strategies and different ideas. And finally, was educated by somebody who taught this amazing strategy called the debt equity blend. And that's really, that's the core of how I structure deals. But the thing about real estate is it can be risky. But what I've found over the years in doing as many real estate deals as I have, I've probably done well over 100 deals by now in less than a decade, is that it doesn't have to be risky. The thing there's an analogy I like to use. So for example, heart surgeons, if me or you, Jared, or you, Jana, were to go out and try heart surgery today, what level of success do you think we'd have?
We'd have a lawsuit.
Well, yeah.
That was a lawsuit, right?
It'd
be incredibly risky. And none of us would be that dumb to go try heart surgery without a medicine degree, right? I don't know why you need a law degree there.
Well, that's for after the lawsuit.
That's to defend yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. No, but the only difference between the three of us and a heart surgeon is the amount of knowledge that they have, the amount of training that they have. And so one thing I think, these fix and flip TV shows, they're really popular right now. They've been popular for like the last 15 years. And I think it does very entertaining stuff. I'm guilty of watching them too, right? But I think it does a few disservices to people. It makes you think that any guy with a hot wife can flip a house and make $90,000. And there's just more to it than that, right? There's some strategy that goes into it. It's absolutely a skilled trade. It's not something that you can watch a couple of seasons of fix that and flop this and whatever those shows are, and then think you're an expert and go make money doing it. You need knowledge and you need an understanding of what can go wrong in a deal. And that understanding of what can go wrong is also going to help you understand how to fix those things. Because if you know that there's a risk of a certain problem popping up while you're working on something, then you're not going to go start doing it unless you understand how to fix that problem as well, right? And that's just, I think, the entertainment that's on right now around fixing and flipping and around, real estate in general, it kind of gives people a false sense of security and a false sense of a little bit of hubris when it comes to their knowledge level. And we see people all the time that are going out, and I know you do as well, that go out and make a mess of things. And they end up losing hundreds of thousands of dollars when they could have got educated for a fraction of that. So very expensive education when you're doing it through the school of hard knocks, right? And so one of the things that I found early on, and that I've used ever since in every single fix and flip transaction that I've done. Jana, you and I have done a couple of deals together, and we've structured it this way every single time. And that is the debt equity blend. So the way you structure money, and I'm going to get into the meat of the strategy here in a second, but I think it's important to understand why to use a strategy like this. The way that you structure your money is going to dictate your exit strategies. It's important to understand that real estate is an investment, no matter how much. And I was just on a soapbox saying, hey, knowledge is what mitigates risk, right? But you're never going to get that risk down to zero in an investment. Their investments are risky, right? The values are contingent on what's going on in the market. And no one of us or anybody listening to this, or even us combined, have enough sway in a market to be able to dictate what it does. Mm-hmm. So there are things that are out of our control. 2008 was a great example of that. And one of the arguments that I make about 2008, by the way, because, we've got this coronavirus thing right now that it could cause the market to collapse. It hasn't yet. I think part of the reason it hasn't yet is because of the trillions and trillions of dollars that the government's been dumping into the economy, which, I'm not necessarily totally against that. I think it's important to keep the economy going. But part of me is concerned that it's just delaying the inevitable. Yeah. So we may see a 2008 type scenario again. And, in our traditional education in elementary school, middle school, high school, we do not get enough financial training. In fact, all we're taught to do is to go get a job and climb a corporate ladder. And I've got my reasons for believing that. One of the reasons I believe that that's all we're taught in school to make money is because the most expensive way to pay your taxes is the W-2 tax form. So, of course, they're going to train us on how to go be W-2s, so we pay our taxes the most expensive way. Right. But they don't, it really does a disservice because there's not enough investors. There's not enough business owners. Those are the people. We are the people. We're the soldiers that keep this economy running, right? So, we're not taught enough about money. And as a result, when it comes to borrowing money, I teach a lot. One of the things that I do, my business that I run, is I coach people. I teach them how to go out and invest in real estate successfully. And most people that come in with a traditional education, even college graduates, only really understand debt when it comes to using other people's money. They only really understand debt. And there's so many other ways to use other people's money. Debt has its own pros and its own cons. Each side of it has its own pros and its own cons. Debt equity blend is just that. It uses debt, it uses equity, and it blends the two to get the job done, right? So I guess I'll take a second and kind of explain the pros and cons of both debt and equity. Yeah. Debt. So debt is cheap. You can go get a hard money loan for 10% or 12% or 15%. And that may sound like a lot, but in an investment that's risky, that's actually, pretty fair. And it's actually less expensive than equity would be if you were to structure a purely equity agreement. Debt's cheap, but it's also risky. And the reason it's risky is because regardless of what happens to the investment, you owe that money back, no matter what. Like the house could burn down and your insurance doesn't cover it and you're held liable and you still have to pay that debt back plus interest, right? So debt's risky for that reason. Now, the other side of it is equity. From the investor standpoint, and of course I'm talking about as an investor, right? Debt for me as an investor, debt is risky because I owe it back no matter what. And for me as the investor, it's cheap, right? Compared to equity. Equity, the pros and cons of equity, and let me define equity real quick. So if you were to structure a deal as an equity deal where you're raising the money with an equity partner, Jared, I would say, hey, Jared, I've got a deal. It's going to be 200 grand. If you want to bring that 200 grand to the table, I'll give you half the deal and we'll split it 50-50. And then we're partners, right? So that's how equity is structured. You bring the money, I bring the deal. We're both bringing value and we split whatever. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be 60-40, 70-30, 99-1. It doesn't matter. But what that creates is some safety. So equity is a lot less risky because now we're partners. Whatever happens to me in this deal also happens to you, right? So if the economy shifts and the price of the house drops below what we were planning on selling it on, and even below our break-even point, and now we're losing money, well, we're in this together. You're losing money, I'm losing. Yeah, well, if you brought all the money, I'm not losing any money, right? Which makes it really less risky for me. But if we have to turn it into a rental and we're stuck in it for 10 years, we're stuck together. Right. So equity is really safer from an investor standpoint, but it's expensive because if my profit margin is $50,000, and just running some quick numbers, if the money that I need to raise is $200,000 at 10%, if I held it for a year, I'd be paying 20 grand. But if I've got a 50-50 partnership, and I hold it for a year, which is a long time for a fix and flip, I owe you 25 grand. That's more expensive. If we flip it in 4 months and make $50,000, I would have only owed, 4 months worth of interest, which would be significantly less than the 20 grand, maybe something more like 8 grand. But just, cowboy math here.
Yeah.
But I would still owe you in an equity situation. I would still owe you $25,000 regardless of how fast we flip it. So hopefully I illustrated that point. Let me know if that didn't make any sense. But equity is more expensive. It's less risky. Debt is less expensive and more risky. So we've got our pros and cons on each side. I think it's my belief that the best way to take advantage of both sides of that is just to blend them, right? And so that's where the debt equity blend comes from.
So just to clarify, the debt is like having a hard money lender, someone that's what they do. Like they just lend money in properties. They're using the property as collateral, just like a bank would, right? And then the equity partner, they're actually a partner, not just a lender. They're in it with you hand in hand. We're going to do this together. They're bringing the money, right? And whatever the agreement is going to be, they're bringing the money, you bring in the deal, and whatever profits are. And so there's pros and cons to both. And so, yeah, that seems pretty good. Okay. I think it's pretty clear as far as definitions go. So how do we blend them together? What was that?
I said, thanks for clearing that up for me because it got muddy there for a second.
No. It's good. It's good. I mean, beautiful. So how do we blend them together then? It seems exciting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fairly simple process. So, just for easy math, I'm going to use an example of a property that we're going to put $300,000 into. Because that makes the ratios that I'm going to share with you very easy to do head math on, right?
Yeah.
So let's say we've got a property that we're going to be buying for $250,000, and we are going to put $50,000 into it. And so our purchase price plus our projected construction costs, that's a total of 300 grand. We need to raise $300,000. Well, the secret ratio to the debt equity blend is whatever the amount that you're going to raise, you raise 2/3 in debt. So that's 200,000 of that 300,000. We'll raise 200,000 in debt. We'll go get a hard money lender, or you could use a private money lender, pay them an interest rate. That's fine. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Just structure it as debt, right? Because debt's cheap. So that's going to put some money back in your pocket by structuring 2/3 of it as debt. But debt's also risky. And I'll get into more of those scenarios in a second.
Yeah.
The equity portion, the other third, should be brought in equity. So for example, I would go to maybe Jared, if you were a hard money lender, I'd go to you and I'd say, I got this project. We're going to put 300 grand into it between acquisition and construction. I'm only asking you to bring 200 to the table. You say, great, 12%. I sign on the dotted line. I get your 200,000 bucks. And then I go to Jana and I say, Jana, I've got this amazing deal. I want you to partner with it on me, or partner on it with me. The profit's going to be 50,000 bucks, and we will split that 50-50 when it's all said and done. Now, obviously, there's you disclose that's a projected profit. It's not going to be exactly $50,000, maybe more or less, but whatever it is, it'll be $100,000, and we're going to split that 50-50. So we're partners on the deal. We own this thing 50-50. We're going to split the profit 50-50. Where all the tax deductions that we're going to get, we're split 50-50, all of it. And Jana likes it. She likes the number. She jumps in. So now I've got Jared's money at 12% debt. I've got Jana's money at 50% equity. That constitutes the 2/3 and the 1/3. We go do the deal, right? And when we're all done with the deal, let's say it takes, a fix and flip usually takes me 4 to 5 months. So let's just use 4 months as a nice round number. So at 4 months, I finish the deal, I sell it, we get our 380 or whatever we sell it for, and Jared gets his money back plus his interest. That was cheap, right? But for me, but Jared got what he wanted out of it. And then Jan and I will take and split that $50,000 profit. Okay, so the reason this is important is because of the equity, or because of the exit strategies that it creates. Okay, so I want to run through that same scenario again by just structuring it as debt, and then we'll run through that same scenario again by just structuring it as equity. Okay, so let's say that, for example, I just used Jared, or my debt lender, to raise the $300,000. And my plan is to sell this house for $380,000, right? If I take Jared's $300,000 at 12%, it's going to be cheap, and I'm probably going to make more profit if I do it that way, but the risk is incredible. So what happens if 2008 or something like it, like what happens if coronavirus creates another 2008 type scenario for the real estate market while we're working on this deal, right? So we're planning on selling it for 380, and that's great. But if the market falls out and you have to take a $100,000 haircut, now you're selling it for 280. Well, I borrowed 300,000 from Jared, and I'm going to owe him interest when I pay that back. So I can't sell it for 280, right? Because I'm already upside down. So I don't really have any exit strategy. I can't rent it out because Jared, I mean, you're familiar with hard money. How long do they usually let you have that money for?
Oh, you're lucky to get 6 months. I mean, a year if you're really, really, really lucky, but 6 months usually like.
And we all know that 2008 took more than 6 months to recover from.
That's right.
It took almost 10 years to recover from that, right?
Right.
So, we're kind of sunk. We can't rent it out because we've only got a 6-month term on the money. Jared, as nice a guy as he is, he's going to come in and foreclose on me in 6 months. So, it doesn't do me any good to put some tenants in there. All I'm doing is helping Jared at that point,
And what's the options to try to refinance? What do you think that'll happen?
Well, and that's the thing. If the market drops and your house is only worth 280 at that point, when you were planning on 380, have you ever tried taking a $280,000 house to the bank and saying, "Hey, here's my collateral. I'd like to borrow 300,000, please"? They're not going to do it. You're under collateralized, right? I mean,
yeah.
So there's the risk, and there's where a lot of people got hurt in 2008. I mean, a lot of people, when the real estate market was going like this. Every idiot knew that the real estate was a good investment when it's going like this, right? So people jump in, and they're kind of climbing that bubble as it's growing, and then all of a sudden the bubble bursts and they don't know what to do because they didn't create exit strategies for themselves. They structured the money in a way that doesn't provide them with any recourse to change their strategy, and so they got foreclosed on and they lost their money. Now. Very important, before I go and run that same scenario on the equity side, I want to share my opinion, my perspective on the nature of money. In 2008, everybody lost money in 2008. Well, money doesn't get destroyed. There weren't dump trucks driving around to everybody's house just taking cash from them, and then they took all the cash to a field and lit it all on fire. That's not what happened in 2008. Money doesn't work that way. It doesn't get destroyed. Money gets transferred. So if so many people lost money in 2008, it had to go somewhere. Where to go? Went to a few really smart, really educated investors, right? And I get people all the time, as I'm talking to prospective students, they're like, well, I'm really scared to jump into real estate right now because what happens if the economy changes? I'm like, I am so excited for the economy to change and for the market to go down, because the most basic fundamental principles of investing is buy low, sell high. Most people do it the opposite. They buy when it's like up here and all their friends are saying, you should do real estate right now. And they're like, maybe I should do real estate, right? That's when it's up here. And then the bubble bursts and they freak out and they sell at a loss, or they get foreclosed on, right? When the economy dips, that's when you want to start buying. So it was all the smart investors that came in right when 2008 happened. They came in and they're like, yeah, I'll take over this deal for a fraction, pennies on the dollar. And those are the smart people. Also, there's a handful of people that were able to protect themselves when that happened. Not everybody lost money. Some people were able to weather the storm because of their level of knowledge. And that's where the debt equity blend comes in. Because on the debt equity blend, if we run that same scenario, we couldn't refinance it and get long-term financing to be able to put tenants in because we were under collateralized. We were over leveraged, right? But with the debt equity blend scenario, where we structured 200,000 of it as debt and 100,000 of it as equity, Jana's my equity partner. Now Jana and I, like I said before, when we were defining equity, we are stuck together. So whatever we do with the house, if we end up losing it, we lose it together. If we end up turning it into a rental, we turn it into a rental together, right? We become partners on that. It's only the debt part that we have to worry about refinancing out. So, where Jared's position in this example, our hard money lender, we only borrowed 200,000 from you. Our price on our property went from 380 to 280, but I can refinance 200 out of a $280,000 piece of collateral, right? I can take that down to the bank and say, here's $280,000 in an asset for your collateral. Can I borrow 200,000 against it, please? And they're going to look at that and jump for joy, because an $80,000 equity position on a $200,000 loan, they're like, yeah, let's go do this all day long. I hope you foreclose because we'll pick up 80 grand in equity, right? So that they're going to give you that loan. And now I'm able to get to refinance Jared's money out. He gets his money back. That's replaced with 30-year financing on a mortgage. And now Jana and I can put tenants in there and rent it out for, the house is worth 280. So there's a gap there. There's going to be some cash flow, and we'll just split that cash flow until Jana and I are able to sell it for the 380 we were originally planning on. And we each split the profit at that point and get 25 each, right? So worst case scenario, we make more money. We're in the deal longer, but we make more money, and that's where the risk really gets taken out of it. That's why the debt equity blend creates a safety net. We may be leaving a little bit of money on the table by not using all debt, but man, we are eating up that risk and just dropping the risk down as far as we can get it. And we've got exit strategies, right? There's things that we can do if something changes.
Now, here's a question for you. So in the debt equity blend in that scenario you gave us, so Jana, she's the equity partner. Now she's, for that, until the market goes back up, she's pretty much out $10,000 or $100,000 in this scenario. So what do you do to kind of prep your partners on this? Like, hey, we're doing this way because if the market does downturn, this is going to happen. Or is it kind of like, oh crap, well, or how do you prep the people that you partner with, let them know that's going to happen? What
Setting
happens?
the expectations up front. Anytime I talk to a new equity partner, I say, okay, let's talk about the risks, right? And we talk about that debt equity blend and the strategy that we're using and why we use it. And then we talk about the scenario where, hey, if the bottom falls out of the market or maybe we accidentally spend more than we meant to, or whatever the case might be, if we're going to end up losing money, we're not going to sell it. We're going to turn it into a rental property and hang on to it for a while, collect some cash flow, let appreciation do its thing, and then we'll sell it when we're in a profitable position.
Right.
So they know, the risk is I just am missing my money longer. And that's happened to me. I mean, I've had to convert fix and flips before. Not very many. I'd say I could count on one hand the number of times I've had to do it, out of the, it's probably in the 70s-ish properties that I've lost count. Fix and flips that I've done over the last decade. But it's just so much safer.
Oh yeah. So, and all that, is that like actually, when you're doing that, your partnerships, do you actually kind of write that up into the agreement as far as like, in case XYZ happens, is that in the JV, or is that kind of just in the explanation? Because sometimes even though it's all in there, huh?
Yep. It's
Okay.
in there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to have a conversation because it's all legalese, I guess. So, you want to have that conversation because it's just going to make it, if you end up having to do that and you didn't have that conversation vocally, they may be surprised. And if they're surprised, it's going to be a lot harder conversation to have than I told you, like this could happen. I told you it could happen. It's happening. And now we got to do it. Right. And because I set the right expectations before I ever take their money, and we have a conversation about it, the times that I have had to say, hey, it's a rental now. They're like, well, that sucks, but I guess you told me so.
Right.
That's kind of the response I get versus the what you didn't tell, you didn't say what's in your contract. Yeah, but what, and then you seem like, somebody that's trying to hide something from them, and that's not the case. There's risk in all of it. We know that. They know that. Right. Let's talk about it. Right.
Jared mentioned the JV, which is the joint venture agreement. So me as the equity partner, I guess that was the question is, how am I protected? How do I know? Is it a handshake that we do? Or how do I know that my money's protected with what you're saying?
Yeah, just handshake.
I got to spit on it. That's important.
Yeah, that's important. That's the deal.
It's
the suction.
Coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, it is important. Somebody told me once, contracts keep friends friends. Mm-hmm. And that's so true. I mean, ideally, one of two things happens with a contract. It either goes in your file cabinet and is never looked at again, or you have to pull it out and read it, and it already discusses the things that could happen and what to do in that scenario. Like, for example, we have to turn it into a rental. Now what? Well, the equity agreement or the joint venture agreement says, right, and we can refer back to that, we both signed it in the beginning, so that's our agreement. And that's how a judge is going to look at it. If you got sued for some reason, because they were mad that they had to keep their money in longer, you could be like, well, it says it right here, and they signed it and dated it, and and the judge would be like, well, it's in writing, you signed it, you dated it, you said that was fine, and now you're not okay with it, but you knew going into it that. So that's just going to protect you. Now there are a couple of ways I structure it. So
just add, not to interrupt you about everything, but to add to that, like, we don't, as investors, we don't have to know all the legalese to write something up. Like in our last podcast, we had Cody Backus on. So just say what you want. Like, okay, I want to have, so this happens, make this into a legal document, Cody, or whatever attorney you have, and make them do it. And it's worth every penny that you pay them. So you don't have to have all that knowledge. People may get kind of intimidated because it's like, oh, I don't know how to write a contract like that. Or you don't have to know. You just have to know someone that knows how to do it. So,
don't write your own contract.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's not smart. But as an investor, and this brings up a side point. You care if I take like a 2-minute tangent?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I've been taking them all day anyway.
No, we're good. You're good.
As an investor, there's this weird idea that an investor is also a contractor, and they're also a property manager, and they're also an attorney, and they're also an accountant and a bookkeeper and a house cleaner. And that's not what an investor is. An investor is an investor, right? And as an investor, you have like 4 things you got to do. Those 4 things are find properties, fund properties, negotiate properties, and close on properties. Outside of those 4 things, you shouldn't be doing anything else. If one of your thoughts is, well, I'm going to move into the house and I'm going to do the work myself and I'll, paint and hammer, and I've never done those things before. Well, you're going to make a disaster of it. If you think hiring a professional is expensive, try hiring an amateur. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm an amateur contractor, I'm an amateur accountant, but I am a professional investor. And so I'm going to stick with what I do best. And for those aspiring to be investors, focus on the activities that investors actually do. If that's what you want to be, just do investory things, because then you'll get even better at it the more you do it. If you try to spread yourself too thin, then you're not going to spend too much time investing. You're going to spend your time collecting rent or painting a fence or whatever the case might be, So, you got to focus. You got to understand that investors aren't those other things. Use professionals, and attorneys are absolutely professionals that professional real estate investors use often. Cody Backus is my attorney. I love that guy.
Awesome.
He's awesome. I talk to him on a daily basis. It's like we're married.
Yeah.
You should just move in.
Right? Yeah, that'd be nice, actually. I should suggest that to him.
Yeah. Hey, you can live in the east wing, and I'll live in the west wing of the house.
It brings a new definition to in-house attorney.
There you go.
So every single deal that you have, you go to Cody or whatever attorney anybody's using. So they create a JV for each individual deal that you do.
So yes and no. Cody created a template for me, a joint venture agreement template, because I use it so often. He's like, you know what, man? And this is why I love Cody. He's like, I'm going to save you some money. Like, you could pay me every time to make a new joint venture agreement, $300-400. How about you just give me $500 and I'll give you a template in Word that you can just change the names on. Sweet. I like that. Right. So he wrote my joint venture agreement. And it's just a template that I can go in and change the names and percentages. But all the other legal stuff that protects me is the same. Now, there are times when I use an LLC instead of a joint venture agreement. And the way that I differentiate that, a joint venture agreement works almost identically to an operating agreement in an LLC, which is what defines how your partnership works and what to do when things happen and all those things. It outlines the percentages that you get, how distributions will be paid, all of taxes, all those things. A joint venture looks and smells and feels exactly like an operating agreement in an LLC. The only difference is how you have to file with the state. So if I'm only going to do one deal with somebody, if I'm like, hey, Jana, let's go do this one thing, and when we're done, see you later, right? Then joint venture agreement, right? If we're going to do more of a formal relationship with our investing, where you're like, Mitch, I got $200,000. Why don't you just hang on to it and just roll it from one deal to the other, and we'll just do that for the next 20 years. Then LLC, right? Because if we're going to be doing multiple deals together, it just makes way more sense, and it's way less paperwork just to formalize it once and go and do it, right? So there are scenarios when you've got a long-term partner, when you're going to want an LLC, that will, your operating agreement will outline all of that stuff legally. And there are times when, when you're just going to do one or two deals with somebody where you use a joint venture agreement. I will say I use the joint venture agreement the first time. So whenever I have a new partner, I always use a joint venture agreement the first time so they can get a feel for it. And then if they, once they've tasted it, if they're like, yeah, I like this still, then we'll keep going and we'll form an LLC.
So it's like you're dating with the JV, and then when you get married, that's when you go into the LLC.
Yeah, exactly. JV's dating.
Yeah,
I like that. JV's dating, LLC's marriage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that analogy.
So Jared, you form an LLC with me?
You have to get one knee. I don't know.
Present it correctly.
I want a ring too. Put the paperwork inside a ring, and it's like, okay.
I love it. So, go ahead if you got a question.
No. Continue. Yeah.
One of the points that I just wanted to make real quick, just going back to our debt equity blend conversation, I do sometimes get asked when I do this training, if equity is so much less risky, why don't you just structure all of your deals in pure equity, just 100% equity? There are a couple reasons for that. The level of risk, see, if it's less risky for me and Jana's my equity partner, that means it's more risky for Jana, right? Whereas debt, it's more risky for me. That means it's less risky for Jared. It's more risky for me because I got to pay you back with interest no matter what. Right. Well, that makes it less risky for you because I got to pay you back with interest no matter what, right? So it's a transfer of risk, right? And so where Jana's going to get a little more money than Jared is, she's also taking on a little bit more risk with me than Jared is, right? So there's a reward for it, but that's the truth of the matter. So structuring something 100% equity is going to transfer all of that risk over to Jana, and I just don't want to do that. I'm about relationships. Look, you're not going to get rich on one deal. So if you're risking somebody else's assets to do one deal, you're not going to last very long. You've got to structure it in a way for longevity. I would rather have Jana go in on 100 deals with me over the course of a decade than just do one deal and make a little bit extra money on it. So that's the first reason. The second reason I don't structure everything as equity is because if you look at it, the debt equity blend, I'm by structuring more debt, I'm actually going to make more money because debt's cheaper. One, two, Jana's money, her 100,000, that might buy one small house, right? Let's say Jana has $300,000 to work with. So that would have bought that whole deal. So I could have used Jana's $300,000 to buy one whole deal that we're going to make 50 grand on, right? But if I use the debt equity blend, I can take Jana's $300,000 and I can go do 3 deals like the one we did and make a total of 150 grand with Jana's same $300,000.
Right.
So using the debt equity blend also makes that equity money go further. You can do more volume. And just like I said, real estate investing, it's a business that you have to scale. Nobody's going to get rich off of one fix and flip or one rental property. You have to be doing them at scale. You need dozens or even hundreds of rental properties to build wealth. You need to be doing multiple multiple fix and flips at a time to build wealth. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. It's just another job, right? You don't make enough doing it at a small scale to make it worth the extra headache of being an investor.
Right.
So that's why you wouldn't use all equity.
And sometimes it's kind of hard to get someone to, I mean, for 300,000 to do a whole flip, that's pretty on par from at least this part of the country, right? And so having one person just have it $300,000 that they want us to dump into one single asset is kind of hard to find, to be honest. But finding someone that has $50,000 or $100,000, okay, that's a little more easier. Even if they have 300, it's like, well, I don't want to risk all 300 in. So it's easier to have the conversation like, okay, let's just try this one. We're only going to put in the 100,000. That's all we need to make this still happen. You're going to make 50. So it makes the conversations a lot easier if you are doing that kind of small portion wise. So the whole thing. Wouldn't
you say though, Jared? I mean, now that we've all seen both sides of this. We've all been on the not investor side, looking in on the investors being like, what the heck are you guys doing? That seems like voodoo magic to me.
Right.
And then now we've been on the investor side and have a totally different perspective. Do you remember when you heard the idea of using other people's money and you thought, who in their right mind would give this guy some money?
Yeah.
Do you remember having that feeling?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing you on stage and me seeing in the audience. I'm like, this guy's smoking crack. This is not,
Yeah, why would anybody do that?
But at first, it's like, there's no way.
Is it easier? Is it easier than you originally expected?
Oh yeah.
It's so easy, right? I mean, it's my favorite part because and I think the reason it's my favorite part of investing, raising capital, is because I was so scared of it. I was so against the idea that anybody would ever give me money to do anything. It's my favorite part now. I love it because it's so much easier. I'm not saying it is easy, but there's definitely an art and a skill and a finesse to it. But it's so much easier than I originally anticipated that every time I do it, I just kind of there's a high that goes like a giddiness, right? Along with it. I love it. But yeah,
it's people all the time that they're just like, here, how do I do it? Here, I got money to do something with it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, if you look at it from a logical perspective, first off, do you know anybody that doesn't want to get into real estate? I mean, so if someone's got cash, they may just not have the knowledge. They want to get into real estate, but have no idea where to go, and they're not about to risk their money. So when someone educated like you guys come along and are like, hey, I got a deal. You want to throw your 100 grand at it? Let's go do it. Right. They're like, sweet. I've been wanting to do they're here you go. Yeah, absolutely. I've been waiting for you. Where you been all my life, kind of thing. So they're excited about it. The other thing is people have more money, I think, than I used to think that they did. And I think they have more money than they think they do. One of the most powerful tools that I learned to use for that debt equity blend, specifically for the equity portion, is other people's retirement accounts. So there's $28 trillion in retirement accounts in this country. And there's only 400 million people who live here. So, I have a couple of, my script is 2 questions long. And I ask them these questions, and they're kind of leading questions, right? I showed you how you could make more money with this, with your retirement account with a safer investment real estate, instead of the stock market, real estate's tangible. You actually get a property if something happens rather than just a smaller retirement account if the stocks go down, right? If I could show you how to do it safer and make more money at the same time, would you be interested in letting me show you? Well, of course they are, right? Of course they're going to listen to that. So, pull up the deal on your phone and be like, okay, so, these are my numbers, 250,000 to buy it, 50,000 we're going to put into it. Our profit should be about 50 grand. We'll split that, 50-50. So you're going to get 25 and I'm going to get 25, which, if you calculate that on your $100,000 invested, that's a 25% rate of return in 4 months. What are you getting in the stock market? 7% in 12 months?
Right.
What are you going to say at that point? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? Well, are you going to tell me no? No, I'm good with 7%.
That sounds like sorcery and witchcraft to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it just takes explaining it down to the level the person you're talking to understands it.
Right.
And I use math every time because math doesn't lie.
Right.
If you can show somebody how they're going to get a 25% rate of return on their money in 4 months versus, like I said, 6 to 7% in 8 months or in 12 months, you're going to get ES every time.
Yeah. And the cool thing is,
you have those like ultra financially conservative people that are like, it just seems risky. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
And they're just like squirming in their seat, you're never going to get those people, but 99% of people out there are going to see the opportunity and jump at it.
Right. And the cool thing is you can have those conversations without having a deal in hand. You can just say like, hey, I do deals like this. So like me and my partner, we did this deal last 2 months ago, or even if you haven't never done a deal, you can be like, my partners and I have done this deal. It could be a deal that you're borrowing from another person basically. And like, this is the profit this is stuff I'm looking at. If I find something like this, would you be interested in partnering with me? So you don't have to have, it's easier to have it if right ready to go, but you don't have to have that.
And, I have that conversation, the scenario you just ran where maybe I don't have a deal like at that moment that I'm ready to show them, but the conversation came up. I have that conversation more than I have any other. And I just have a little spreadsheet that I keep on my phone in Google Sheets. And anytime someone's like, hey, when you're ready, I got 100 grand, let's go do it. Right. Or I got 300 grand in my 401k, let's go do it. I'll put them in my spreadsheet. And then when I have a deal, my spreadsheet's the first place I go and I start making calls, right? And I got maybe at this point, I started out with like 4 or 5 people on my spreadsheet, right? At this point, I got like 150 people on my spreadsheet. So I just go down the list. Whenever I have a deal, usually only takes about 10 phone calls. And people are like, I'm in, let's go do it, right? So problem is there's always that scale issue, right? Like, you've got 4 or 5 investors, but then because you have 4 and 5 investors, now you like, well, I should do 4 or 5 deals, right? So now you got like 5 deals going on at once, and then those 4 and then it's like, crap, now I need more money. So now you go out and find money, and you get 4 or 5 more, and it's like, sweet, I can do 4 or 5 more deals, So it's kind of this ongoing like leapfrog effect of money deals.
Right.
That's part of the game, and it's fun, right? It's a sport, so it's just how fast can you do it. The velocity.
So that debt equity blend that you're talking about, can that be done with like a normal mortgage and equity type thing?
Absolutely. So I use a very similar strategy to acquire my rental properties. So I and this may not be what you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about like a traditional mortgage. I know you and I are in on a short-term rental together where we kind of did it like traditional mortgage and equity, right?
Yeah, that was after the fact, but like from full on going straight, like purchasing the property, so to speak. Like if you were to get a mortgage and then you still need to rehab it, is that something that you can structure that way?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of mortgages, especially for short-term deals. Your closing costs, the amount of time it takes to get a mortgage, you're going to lose the deal, right? Real estate investing, especially fix and flips, you have to buy the deal at a discount, because the whole idea behind a fix and flip is I'm going to buy it cheap, I'm going to put a certain amount of money in it, and I'm going to sell it for more than what I put into it, right? So you have to buy that deal, and I'm going to do it in like 4 months. So you have to buy that deal at a discount. Those are not like, they're not just sitting there. Right, there's not a tree that you can go to and be like, "Here's a deal,"
Deal tree.
I was like, yeah, where's that at?
I wish there was. If you find one, let me know.
I know.
But Jared knows this. I mean, Jared, you're a wholesaler, man. Finding a deal, that's a skill in and of itself, especially a fix and flip, because of the level of margin that you need. I mean, we're talking where we work in the Mountain West, we're talking $100,000 spread, or maybe even a $200,000 spread, right. To make it a deal that's even worth looking at. So where are you going to find a homeowner with a $400,000 house that they're willing to sell you for $200,000? Well, it only comes up in situations of distress, usually, where maybe they lose the house, or they're going to lose the house, or there's a divorce, or there's a bankruptcy going on. So finding the deal a lot of times can take that work. Was there a question? I feel I got off on this tangent, and I don't remember what the question was. What was your question?
No, just for the newer investors that are probably thinking, oh, I'll just get a mortgage. Why not get a mortgage and then use equity to rehab it, and then I'll sell it later?
See, I knew there was a reason I was talking. I forgot what it was. So because of that, these deals are in high demand, right? So having that skill like Jared has to be able to go out and find these deals and be able to act quickly on them is important. And a mortgage is not quick. I mean, you got to be able to buy these deals in like 48 hours to maybe a week at the most. If you need 2 months to get qualified and then come in and sign the papers, and then they want to look at all your financials for the last 47 years, and then they want your tax returns, and then they call you back and want more tax returns 3 weeks later, and all the hoops you have to jump through to get a mortgage. Not going to happen if you're going to be competitive in the market, because while there's not a huge amount of investors out there doing what we do, there's also not necessarily an incredible amount of deals. There's enough to go around for sure, but you got to be competitive, and so having like we talked about, having equity partners ready to go, having that conversation, maybe showing them an example deal and saying, hey, if a deal like this comes up, I'm finding about one every 2 weeks, or I'm finding one about every week. If a deal like this comes up, can I call you? And would you be willing to play on something like this? And if they say yes, add them to the list, and then call them when a deal comes up, right? And then you can have the money turned in 24 hours. Find a relationship with a hard money lender for your debt relationship that can turn their money in, less than a week. Have you guys had Matt Strong on your podcast yet?
We have.
He's a stud too, man.
He was like in the first 10. He was like he was like 6, or he was number 6 episode. So I think that, he was
solid dude. I love Matt.
To this day, that one episode has more views than any other episode.
It's that sexy bald head of his.
We want to know how it works.
I'm trying to copy it. It's not working. I don't know.
It's a twofer. Look at this. You got Jared over here as well.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know how you guys got through that episode with all the glare.
There was a lot of glare. We had a lot of tweaking in the video, but we got through it.
More glasses.
On there. Surgeon General recommends you wear glasses to watch this. This is a relationship business. You don't have to have money to be a real estate investor. You can be broke as a joke. That's how we all started, right? But if you have the relationships and the knowledge,
that's all you need.
That's the currency that's required in real estate investing: knowledge and relationships, and an understanding on how to fill your bank account in both those currencies. Right? Fill your knowledge bank account every day. You should be doing some sort of work that fills your knowledge bank account. Learn about strategies. Learn whatever it might be. Go to a seminar. Right? People kind of poo-poo the real estate seminars. I love them. I'll go to them just to sit and watch them because I know I'm going to learn something. Right. And, and if not, it's a great refresher, and it reminds me of things that I forgot. So always be filling that knowledge bank account, because that's one of the currencies to do real estate investing. And then the relationship bank account. Well, I'm scared about asking people to borrow money to go do a deal. Then you're not going to be very successful, because you've got to be willing to talk to people. Right. That's the only way to build a relationship, is communicate. Right. And so if you're not willing to build that relationship currency and make new friends and talk to them about what you're doing and be excited about it and get them excited about it so that they want to come do it with you, then you're not filling that currency either. And, all that you're left with is your own money. And we all know that where we started, if it was just up to our own money or our own credit, we wouldn't be doing real estate deals.
I started working at Walmart at $0. It was just
I had $0. Yeah. I was selling websites when I started. I was making 40 grand a year. And it was Salt Lake City, just going business to business, one small business to the next, talking to small business owners. Hey, what do you think about letting the boys back at the shop build you a website? It'll be like $2,000, right? I was making 40 grand a year doing that. I was 26 years old. And I just got tired of working for somebody. I got tired of working a job and reporting back to the boss and having the boss get mad at me, and and knowing that I was never going to make much more than $40,000 a year. That was frustrating. And you know what? I had made some pretty poor decisions, I think, educationally, professionally. I barely graduated high school. I didn't go to college. I didn't even step foot in a college. Now I'm teaching people. Isn't that funny? But I never stepped foot in a college. Went straight into the workforce, started selling print. I started as a customer service representative for a company that did commercial printing. So they do printing for big companies like Marriott hotels and stuff like that. Then I worked my way up to the sales department, and from then on it was sales. I sold print, I sold technology, I sold windows and insulation, websites, I sold all the things. And so my resume wasn't that impressive. I didn't have like I spent 4 years for the IT department and worked my way up to vice president. And I didn't have that kind of resume. So at 26, when I'm like, dude, I hate working. Like, I hate having a job. I hate making crap money. I hate living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, I hate life right now. And then pause and look at the situation I'd created for myself. There was no hope. I didn't have anywhere to go. I couldn't go apply for, a management position somewhere. Yeah. And so out of desperation, what I started doing was I just started studying wealthy people. I picked up every book I could find and watched every TED Talk and YouTube video. And I just started getting addicted to figuring out what rich people were doing so that I could copy it, just like I did in high school, right? Yeah. If you don't know the answers, just copy someone else's answers. But the difference is, in life, that's okay. In school, that's not okay. We're taught that that's not okay. In life, that's just fine. If I can copy what Steve Jobs did, other than like exactly, hey, I call this the OPAD, right? That's my new product. No, you can't do that, but you can copy how they got there. You can follow their blueprint. And I started realizing that. And so I think one of the first books I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Changed my life. That book totally, completely changed my mindset. It's what introduced me to the idea of real estate investing. I found an education. We talk about that knowledge currency. I found an education. The education cost $20,000, and I was making 40 grand at the time, spending like 45,000 a year. So I didn't have them. I had to go get credit cards, and I maxed out all the credit cards on a prayer that it would work. Well, luckily, it was a very high quality education, and I had some awesome mentors to follow, and it worked. Yeah. And now, I've got wealth. I've got financial freedom. I've got time freedom. I have assets. When times get tough, because they still get tough when you make a lot of money. When times get tough, I got assets that I can sell and cash out on, right? That are my savings accounts. So
you have amazing friends.
I have amazing friends. There's one named Jana. She's really it's for me, real estate investing was a miracle in my life. It got me to where I wanted to be when I had no hope of getting there, and no direction to turn. Real estate investing provided me with that opportunity to break out of what society would have told me and was telling me. That I had no hope. There's a very strict line. This is what you're going to make for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. It broke me out of it. And that's why I coach. It's more, for me, it's more about my purpose than it is money. Coaching makes me a good amount of money. I'd say my real estate makes me more money. But I coach because I'm passionate about helping other people and giving other people the opportunity that I got to break out of that rat race that we all have to, that we all are plunged into because of public education.
Now, if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you and maybe even look into some of your coaching options, how would they do that?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of websites. My personal website is mitchanelson.com. Nelson is Nelson. That's got some awesome testimonials on there by students. I think I've got one from both of you on there, by the way. So appreciate that. Thank you. I also have mitchnelsonrealestate.com, which dives more into exactly the program that I put students through, the training that I put students through, and they can get a little more information by going to that website.
Cool.
Perfect.
Awesome. We'll have both of those links in our show notes too for your listeners and watchers.
Thank you.
So beautiful, Mitch. Man, it's always a pleasure to have you on and talk and just to talk to you. It's the first time having you on, but it's been a pleasure to have you on and to share your vast amount of knowledge. When I say I wouldn't have been in real estate if it wasn't for you, I really mean it. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and just giving me the push that I needed to start running. So I really appreciate it on a personal level. So I really appreciate you, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure being here.
Oh, sure. We're so grateful. For our listeners, if you're watching this on Facebook, on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. If you're listening to this on our podcast formats, make sure to like, rate us, share it. It really helps out the channel. We want to reach and help as many people as we possibly can. It really means a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, Mitch.
Thank you.
We hope you liked that podcast. Stay tuned for next Monday for a brand new podcast and a brand new guest. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.